Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. Today we meet people tackling important issues across our country. Actor Ryan Reynolds takes us on his personal health journey that helped raise awareness about cancer screening. And Margaret Atwood, author of The Handmaid's Tale, helps explain the recent uptick in books being banned from schools. But we start with how one community is helping some families combat the surging cost of food. Lana Zach traveled to Baltimore where she witnessed a food bank rising to the challenge.
Here's a bag for you to put your items in.
Even before the truck is fully unloaded, clients begin lining up to receive food at the community center The Door in Baltimore.
How many did you get? 6?
You can get 6 today.
The director of The Door, Tema Smith-Wilson, estimates that of the 100 people she sees in a day, about 600 mouths are fed.
People coming through and they're just not getting for their families, but they might have a sister or a brother that they're getting a little bit extra for. We have a lot of freezers and refrigerators, but we never need to use them other than storing meats. After our distribution days, we've never had anything extra.
What's over here?
Crystal Jenkins is cooking for 5 people, including her youngest son, who's 9 years old.
I feel blessed when I can come back with something and help me. They not hungry. That's all I'm saying. They not going to be hungry. That's right.
The price of food has outpaced most other items that have been subject to high inflation. Food prices have jumped 13.1%, the biggest one-year increase since 1979.
So you got 2 bags at the food pantry today at The Door, and you got 1 bag at the grocery store for $20. How long will this food last you? Because you're feeding 5 people.
Yes, something like 3 days. That's what I'm counting on. And then I'll be back at the pantries again.
For people dealing with food insecurity, the anxiety can be staggering. Emin Rothheden, a single mother of 2 boys, has seen her income as a food server decrease as food costs rise.
So I told my kid that we have to save more money, and then I even have to go to the grocery in the early morning, like 6, 7 in the morning, to get the cheap meat because they on sale cheap meat from yesterday, from the day before.
A lot of energy is going into trying to figure out how to save and still provide for your family.
Exactly. Yes, a lot everything in my brain. Like, okay, what I gonna do today? What I gonna cook?
The problem is compounded. As more people are asking for help, resources are becoming even more scarce.
We used to get 700 boxes to distribute to our organization, to the people in our community, and to other organizations. Right now it's 100.
You went from 700 to 100.
Yes, to 100.
But the number of people you're serving
is increasing, yes. But we can't complain because something is better than nothing.
Jerry Branch used to run a food bank, but the funding dried up and so did his income. As a senior citizen, he now finds himself a client in the food line.
Was it hard for you to go to the other side of the table?
No, not really, because people that I dealt with, was just as equal or better than I was. I've never looked at it to down anyone, or I just never looked at it that way.
Are your Social Security checks enough?
No.
Because they're not keeping up with inflation.
No.
The rising cost of food forcing tough choices.
Do you always have enough food?
Yes, I pretty much always, thanks to the door, I always have enough food. Before that, we're struggling.
When you were struggling to try and find food bank options for your family, did you go hungry?
Yeah, I go hungry, but I feel like, thank God, I met The Door before I get very, very hungry. Thank God, I still work for the restaurant, so at least I get 1 meal to take home with me. As long as they're full, I'm fine.
Ryan Reynolds is known for his blockbuster hits, but he's taken on a different kind of role to raise awareness about cancer screening. He co-starred with our very own Dr. John LaPook for this next story.
I would never normally have any medical procedure put on camera and then shared.
Morning.
It's not every day that you can raise awareness about something that will most definitely save lives. Going in. That's enough motivation for me to let you in on a camera being shoved up my ass.
Ryan,
It's the first time you've had a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
And
we're filming it.
You're filming it,
which is like also it's awful.
The procedure itself doesn't take long. We talk, 30 minutes, something like that. It's stunningly effective.
I'm gonna eat a graham cracker.
You did such a good prep that I was able to find an extremely subtle polyp that was on the right side of your colon. This was potentially life-saving for you. I'm not kidding. I'm not being overly dramatic. I mean,
love it.
This is exactly why you do this, okay? You had no symptoms.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm thrilled for you.
Thank you so much for this. Seriously, thank you for pushing me to do this.
This is the polyp. I just cut it off at the snare, and it's gone. You are interrupting the natural history of a disease, of something, of a process that could have ended up, developing into cancer and causing all sorts of problems. Instead, you're not only diagnosing the polyp, you're taking it out.
I figure I can't go wrong in terms of comparing myself to Ryan. They either find nothing, and that means my colon was cleaner than his, or they find a polyp, all set, and it's either bigger than his, which is awesome, or it's smaller than his, which means I had less of an opportunity to have cancer. Either way, I win.
Hi, you're all done. You're in recovery now.
So easy.
Good. How do you feel?
I feel great.
Good.
Today we found 3 polyps. They were small. They were not a big deal, but certainly a good thing that we found them early and removed them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you in a couple of years too.
Coming up, a deep dive into both sides of the issue surrounding banned books in our public schools. Welcome back. We now move to the divisive issue of banned books. According to PEN America, from July of 2021 through March of 2022, there were nearly 1,600 actions taken in school districts to ban more than 1,100 titles. That's defined as when a previously accessible book becomes either completely removed from availability to students or where access to a book is restricted or diminished because of its content. I spoke with people on both sides of the issue.
Are you aware of Indian boarding schools?
They call themselves the Teen Banned Book Club, and every week this summer, they gathered at the Firefly Bookstore in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, to talk about them.
It's like the cherry on top. Why?
On this day, Sherman Alexi's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian was the topic.
And it was only when he got older he realized
just one of the novels that frequently makes the American Library Association's list of most challenged books.
You don't really see much actual Native American history that isn't, like Claire said, like sugar-coated. 9th
grader Jocelyn Diffenbaugh founded the group. What got into you to start a book club on banned books?
When I first started seeing all the books being banned, especially in states like Texas, where they'd come out with a very, very long list, I hadn't seen anything wrong or that would need them to be challenged.
Have you had a hard time finding books you want to read? Jocelyn's mother, Lisa, says the real turning point came when it appeared their local school board might be facing the same debate.
Is with our last school board election, we started getting mailers about why to elect these certain people to the school board. And in there they had the book, I Am Jazz. And they said, this is what they're teaching your children. They want them to be transgender. And our school didn't even own the book. She read this flyer and she said, Mom, like what? They're using a book to rile people up to get them to vote. They're using this book as a weapon.
I don't understand. I can't get a straight answer from anybody. Who chooses these books?
As efforts to ban books have risen nationwide, school board meetings have become increasingly contentious.
I think they should be thrown in a fire.
People see them.
University of Pennsylvania professor Dan Hopkins studies the nationalization of state and local politics.
A lot of fervor around possibly banning books is just the latest instance of national politics coming home and deep symbolic divisions that national politics bring playing out in our schools and in our communities.
And they're trickling down to the books our children read?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can get involved in your local community. You can take your passions and your commitments in national politics, and you can bring them into local politics. You can bring them to a school board meeting.
We are angry and we know our rights. Enjoy the time you have left.
It was that spirit of activism and anger over school COVID restrictions that led Tiffany Justice to co-found Moms for Liberty. The group, championed by conservatives, advocates for greater parental rights, accountability, and transparency in schools.
Parents are the best and first teachers of our children.
As Moms for Liberty has swelled to more than 85,000 members with chapters in 42 states, some chapters have pushed to ban or limit access to books in school libraries.
This issue around books has become a lightning rod.
It's a distraction. I mean, there's not two sides to this issue. There are moms who love their kids who don't want pornography in school, and then there are people who do want pornography in school. I think that the book issue has been used to try to marginalize and vilify parents, and the truth is there is no place for pornography in public schools.
That's a lightning rod of a term.
Yeah, it's pornography. Yeah. We don't put Penthouse and Hustler and Playboy into public school libraries. And the books that have been removed in Indian River County, for example, where I'm from, have been books that provide no educational content. There's no value to them. Our moms are horrified. It's shocking when the moms come to the school board and they try to read a book that has such graphic depictions of sexual violence, and their mic is cut off.
Excuse me.
Yes, you are right.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We have children at home.
Don't you find the irony in that?
But then it's placed back on a public school library shelf. Our moms are not political. This is something that I think has been assumed and is really wrong. A lot of our moms have never really been involved in the political process at all.
It feels like a runway. Honestly, it feels like a runway leading up to the next election.
Author Jason Reynolds is the national ambassador for young people's literature.
Imagine growing up not being able to read the Diary of Anne Frank or not being able to experience Beloved.
He's seen several of his own books banned, including Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, and All American Boys, a novel about two teens' experiences with racism and police brutality.
If you're writing about race, if you're writing about sex and gender, then you're on a chopping block.
What is the most effective challenge to these books?
Obscenity. So the interesting thing is that everyone thinks that the most effective challenge is the book has racial topics that make my children uncomfortable, right? So this is sort of what we're using to talk about because it's the one that's being pushed to the forefront. But the truth of the matter is that most of these books are challenged based on obscenity, which is an excuse to not have to say it's because there are racial topics or there are sexual topics in these books. And so what happens is that we produce this work, young people read it, the adults are uncomfortable, and so they assume that their young people are uncomfortable. But the real question is, why is discomfort a bad thing? Is being uncomfortable the same as being unsafe? The answer is no.
Perhaps no author has had their work challenged more than Margaret Atwood, author of The Handmaid's Tale.
I'm too old to be that shocked, surprised, or horrified because I've seen it.
For those folks out there, parents in particular, who say they deserve a right to say what's going on in the education of their young people.
Everybody deserves a right to say anything they wish as long as it's true. That's the real question. But part of a democracy is parents having a say. They can have a say. They don't necessarily have the right to dictate. But to say they can't have a say, that's pretty authoritarian, isn't it? What the parents were saying was that they didn't want Hitler's race theory taught in schools. You'd probably say hooray for them.
But at its core is access and all the potential that can be lost.
But we all need to have that freedom to parent our kids the way we want. So it's fine if you don't want your kid reading The Hate You Give or even Harry Potter, but you need to manage that within your own family and with your own kids. But don't take away every kid's read and every parent's ability to manage what their kids read.
Not every book is for everybody, but every book is for someone.
It might not be for her, and it might not be for my family, it might not be for most kids, but there is one student who might need to read that book, and it's there for them.
After the break, we visit a nonprofit farm mentoring teens on how to grow their own businesses. This is Eye on America. We head now to the Heartland, where Janet Shamlian found an agriculture program teaching young people how to be entrepreneurs.
There's more than food growing on this patch of farmland, a crop of boys becoming men. It's a 2-year agriculture-focused, free entrepreneurship class called Boys Grow, offering mentoring to 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, many lacking important life skills.
The soft skills we teach are skills that they're going to be able to continue on, but they have an opportunity to learn them out here.
After working in the juvenile justice system, founder John Gordon was looking for a way to inspire kids, like Kendrell Kirkwood.
Yeah, He told me to go to college. College is worth it. Do everything that I probably wouldn't want to do, because next thing you know, I might want to do it.
There's a need in the Kansas City metro area where data indicates there are nearly double the number of youth homicides compared to the national average. And in Missouri, black students are half as likely as white students to graduate college. 3 days a week in summer, the 10-acre farm is worked by 4 teens, tasked with everything from planting and harvesting crops.
This is your cylinder head.
To auto mechanic work, even culinary training.
Put a couple of peppers on each one.
All for which the boys earn a paycheck.
How do you think this will help you?
I feel like it'll teach us a whole lot of stuff, like as we were talking about the social skills.
Does it help that you get a paycheck?
Oh yeah, it does help very much.
22-year-old Somo U was in the 2016 class, now working as a mechanic.
What part of your experience here still sticks with you today?
I think just tenacity and like going for what you want, and then like the entrepreneurship part of it too.
With marketable skills and the ability to work as part of a team, graduates have gone on to Ivy League colleges and well-paying jobs.
I see the evolution of these kids every year, and that's one thing about my job that never gets old.
A unique initiative planting the seeds of possibility and harvesting young talent.
We close our show with the story of a man who was almost the first black astronaut in space, but he found a new mission, turning history into art. Here's Derica Duncan.
I sit down at the table over there to get it ready for casting.
Inside 88-year-old Ed Dwight's art studio in Denver, Colorado, is a collection of stories told through the sculptures he creates.
This is one of the Buffalo Soldiers. He was Corporal Clinton Greaves, and he was one of the 18 Medal of Honor winners during the Indian fighting days.
But before Dwight became an artist dedicated to memorializing notable figures in Black history, he had hopes of making history of his own in space.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
When President John F. Kennedy decided to take one step for man, he also made plans to send the first black astronaut to the moon and thought Ed Dwight was a star.
When I got this letter, November the 4th, 1961, offering me this opportunity to be the first Negro astronaut, I thought these dudes were crazy. Why me? I mean, what in the world is this all about? You know, and I said, no. I mean, my first reaction to it was, that's the nuttiest thing I ever heard.
At the time, Dwight was a 27-year-old Air Force pilot who had to be convinced to take the leap.
I consulted my mother, and my mother's telling me about all this stuff that I could do as a symbol, and think of you know, all the kids, you'll get excited.
Your mother tells you this is bigger than you. This is you representing African Americans.
Exactly.
This is definitely a sign of progress for the Negro in the country.
As the first African American astronaut candidate, Dwight was considered a source of pride within the black community. He toured the country promoting his newfound journey, but when he returned to the space program, he faced a new frontier of opposition.
So all these white folks that I'm dealing with, I mean, my peers and the leadership was just horrified at the idea of the president appointing me to this position.
You were known as the Kennedy boy.
Yeah, I was the Kennedy boy.
After 4 years of intense training, NASA decided Dwight did not have what it took to be an astronaut. The man, dubbed Kennedy's boy, was quickly brought down to Earth.
Are you now, in fact, completely out of the astronaut program? Is there a possibility of you ever being back in?
I don't know. I don't have any idea.
Astronaut dreams dashed, Dwight left the Air Force in 1966. He worked at IBM and started several businesses, including a construction company.
Every evening I would go to each one of my sites and all the copper and the steel and pieces of stuff that were left over, and I'd throw them in the back of my Mercedes, and I'd go home and then I had to teach myself how to weld.
One person who took note was his friend and Colorado's first black lieutenant governor, George Brown, who saw Dwight's work and encouraged him to pursue it seriously.
George had been to one of my parties and saw this art in my house, and they wanted to do a sculpture of me for the Capitol. And I said, well, that's not what I do. And he says, you're going to become one of the famous sculptors in the United States of America when I get through with you. And I laughed at him. I said, George, you are full of stuff.
Since then, Dwight has created nearly 20,000 gallery pieces and more than 130 memorials across the country, honoring those hidden figures of black history.
I had never sculpted before. I was 45 years old like this.
He says his favorite memorial is the one he did at the Texas State Capitol.
200 images of people on that Texas memorial, and they all have different personalities, and they all have different dreams, and I wanted to put that in their faces.
A long way from space, these sculptures give us a better sense of the world in which we live.
How do you think your life would have been different had you been the first black astronaut into space?
You know, I probably would have done the same thing that black guys did go into space. You know, and that became the highlight of their life experience. Because I wouldn't have done anything, I probably wouldn't have done anything else.
Does it still bother you today that you were not the first?
That didn't bother me. It was a great opportunity, and all the little parts and pieces of everything you see in the studio and all those buildings down there is a manifestation of what I learned in the years that I was in that program.
What do you want your legacy to be?
You know, the legacy I want is that I gave a damn. And that's it.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching Eye on America.
This episode of Eye on America is sponsored by Amazon.